Hello. We got another Warriors Den this week. Next week is an off week. With this week, we got the showcase of the new testing grounds and what we'll be seeing next week. Next week on Thursday, we will be getting access to the testing grounds, so we can just sample these ourselves, see how they work. And for those of you who aren't familiar, haven't seen the previous mentions of the testing grounds, this is a new feature coming to the live game that will let them showcase new changes to characters without needing us to go download a PTS or a separate client. On top of this, both console and PC will be getting this. You just go to the event playlist, so your faction's stronghold, and you will have a playlist there called Testing Grounds. With that, you can go ahead and play a updated version of the game with some tweaks to it. We'll get into those tweaks in a little bit here, but that's what Testing Grounds will be. Once you quit the match, you'll be given a survey so that you can give your feedback on how these changes are, if you like them, if you don't like them. They haven't clarified if they'll offer suggestions too, but in theory, you should be able to suggest things that you think are wrong or need to be improved, or just say, good job, these are good changes. The huge bit of news for this is that consoles can finally contribute. They will have the ability to say whether or not things are a good change on console and see how they work on console. So that does mean we have a lot more community to give feedback with. So first up, we have the content of the week. This has already been on screen, and it's more the content of the fortnight. It is every 14 days instead of every week. Then for the event playlist this weekend, we have Carousel of Death returning. For those of you who haven't played it, it's twist on elimination. You kill opponents, their respawn timer increases, and once you kill the entire enemy team, you win. They respawn very quickly at first, and then I think it's 3 seconds each time they die. We also had the emote contest winners announced. So we do have the new emotes coming out for the emote contest they held back in June, I believe. We'll probably be seeing those later in the season or next season. So let's go ahead and jump into the juicy details of the testing grounds. They wanted to give us some reminders on this. I already covered a couple of them. It is in the regular game client. It will run for a week and a half, 2 weeks. So they can change this on the fly too. This is done through a live update, which means they can change this date, make it go live, do whatever they want, whenever they want, which is fantastic for future changes. But this current phase 1 with the Gladiator, Centurion, and Warlord, this will be running for 2 weeks. They will be going on all of their social channels, which is Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, so they can gather feedback there, as well as having the survey, which I already mentioned. And then based on this feedback, we'll determine what they do with the current data. So if they do things like, for example, give 200 millisecond light attacks and everybody says, no, these are way too fast, they won't put them in the game. It'll also give them a way to gauge interest in certain changes so that they can say, some people do like 200 millisecond attacks and some people don't, so what about compromising? Or, something a lot more realistic, like tuning Orochi's 466 millisecond lights. There's some leeway there. And then there's the mention of the timeline for deployment. They mentioned on stream that this could be, they could test simple changes, like the mid-season roll patch that we got last season. So if we got a change like that in the testing grounds, they could look at the feedback and how easy it is to implement, and if the testing grounds feedback was positive, they can implement that mid-season and get us a patch much faster. Other than that, if they have major changes that'll take some additional time to tweak, or things that weren't positive, people didn't like them, negatively affected the game, that kind of stuff, those might take a little longer. So let's go ahead and have a chat about the upcoming changes for testing grounds. We've known for a while now, Centurion's getting big changes, Gladiator's getting medium changes, and Warlord's getting small changes. That's definitely true. The 10-second impression here is Centurion is going to be nicer to fight against, Gladiator is going to be a total bitch on console, Warlord, he's just a little bit better. So first up with Centurion here.
Wait for it.
Look at that.
Oh, yeah.
One more time. How about this?
What we got?
Look at it. Whoop! Took him 4 hours. I think it was well spent.
His charged heavy opener now does 30 damage fully charged instead of 25. The charge portion is now between 300 and 500 milliseconds instead of 200 to 600. Guard break vulnerability is now 300 milliseconds before the strike. That's a bigger window than previously. Maximum charge hit recovery for a bound opponent is now 766 milliseconds, down from 1300 milliseconds. And the knockback minimum distance has been reduced. It can also no longer be soft feinted into a guard break while out of stamina. The charged heavy finisher can now be feinted. Maximum charge strike can now be feinted into a guard break. And the same change as with the opener, the maximum charged hit recovery is now lowered significantly, and it can no longer be feinted into a guard break while out of stamina. The jab has been changed so that you can now be exited with a cancel, a feint. That is the hard button press feint, starting at 300 milliseconds until 300 milliseconds before a strike. Being that it can be charged, this does give you a variable feint window, a fairly significant one. The punch now moves further forward. This is just to catch people walking backwards. And the charge portion has been increased to 800 milliseconds from 600 milliseconds. It will also no longer break revenge activation. The jab combo has pretty much the same tweaks. This means that there's no longer a difference between a jab and a jab combo. The Eagle's Talon, that's when he jumps on you, this has now been buffed to 45 damage from 35. His zone attack can now be feinted at 200 milliseconds into the second strike and 300 milliseconds into the third strike. These feints will cost you 10 stamina. Each strike now costs 20 stamina instead of 60 up front and then no additional stamina. And the damage has been reduced from 25, 25, 25 down to 17 across the board. The zone has also been tweaked so that it no longer has a heavy hit reaction and now has a medium hit reaction. For light attacks, the light opener has been buffed from 15 to 17 damage. The second light attack and the third light have both been reduced down to 500 milliseconds, and those damages have also been buffed to 17 from 12. The recoveries on all of his light attacks have been increased 100 milliseconds later. Shouldn't be a significant change there, but here we are. For the parry counter, his heavy finishers are no longer guaranteed, his Legion kit can be dodged, and there's a new link which guarantees second lights and chains. Centurion used to have a quick throw ability. This is being replaced with a jab. As far as I'm concerned, this is purely an animation change, and it won't actually change how the mechanics work on him. It'll still be a hit to your stamina and a throw. On throw, Centurion's kick and heavy finisher are now launched 200 milliseconds later, and the opponent unbalanced starts 100 milliseconds earlier into the throw. The idea behind these changes is that it should make Centurion a lot funner to fight against. It does remove his cutscene, and it gives you an opportunity to react to jabs and things like that. You no longer get the confirmed jab, but there is a feint to guard break for people who dodge early. So you do still have some form of confirm on there for people who play suboptimally. Should be a decent change. I'm looking forward to seeing him in testing grounds and how Centurion players react to this. I'm not super familiar. I haven't played him since Season 2, so hopefully these are good and I'm not just out of touch here. Being against Centurion, all of these changes seem like they're pretty decent. So there's the end of Centurion. Let's move on to Gladiator. As we've known, he has medium level tweaks. His top lights for chained attacks, that is second, third, and fourth, because he does indeed have 4 lights in his chain, are all 433 milliseconds down from 600. His side chained lights are also being reduced down to 466. This is another third step tweak, similar to how Orochi got his tweaked. Should be a massive improvement, and this is what I was saying, he's probably going to be a bane on console. He does have very fast lights, and they are omnidirectional. And then Fushin Inctus, I guess that's how you pronounce it, is now 600 milliseconds when the target is out of stamina instead of the previous 800 milliseconds. This is much better known as Toe Stab. The Skewer ability has had forward movement added to it for both the strike and the feint. This should prevent people from backwalking you. And his Reflex Guard has been buffed to 1100 milliseconds, same as everybody else with Reflex Guard. That is the entirety of his medium level changes. It's not a lot, but it is just enough, I think, to make him solid. Gladiator has had a lot of little moves to make, even with his slow-ass lights, but this should give him the ability to have one more tool in his kit so that he can throw out a few more attacks. And the ability to throw out omnidirectional, really fast lights should bring him up to par with other characters that have similar stuff. The fact that he has a good kit behind him on top of these lights is just, it'll make the lights a lot more important versus something like Orochi where the lights being fast are because he has nothing else. Skipping from there, we go on to Warlord. He is seeing minor changes. We've known for months that these are minor changes. His light attacks are now enhanced, which means they don't stop the chain when they get blocked. His light attacks have a slightly increased range. His top light opener deals 1 more damage. His side light openers deal 2 more damage. His top light finisher now deals 2 less damage. and his top light finisher has a medium hit reaction, so it'll still ledge like it did before. His heavy attack finisher now has hyper armor 100 milliseconds sooner, and the tracking on his stab from full block, so the thing that nobody uses because they go for the headbutt instead, that has slightly better tracking. We'll see how much this tracking actually matters. Probably not going to change too much, but here we are. Those are the entirety of the changes coming up to the old heroes. Some of these may be coming mid-season here in Year 3, Season 3. Others might be coming Year 3, Season 4. It depends how the feedback goes. I think that does cover most of the news-worthy stuff this week. In a side mention, there are the huge tournaments that are being paid for by Ubisoft. They don't want to call them sponsored, but Ubisoft put out a prize pool of 1.5 million steel per tournament. The PS4 ones are coming up this weekend. You can catch them on Twitch, and the Xbox ones will be coming up next week. If you want to sign up for those, you can go check Reddit out. The sticky post I made, it does have the links to the tournaments at the bottom, so it should be the first or second thread if you go check the subreddit. Otherwise, you can go to battlefy.com and check out the For Honor section. The For Honor console is the one hosting the Steel series. If you want to join, there's one in NA and one in EU. We did have a tournament last weekend for EU and NA PC. Those ones were hosted by The Arena. Those ones were pretty entertaining. I really enjoyed watching the NA tournament. The EU one was a little long for my taste and had quite a few different issues, but the new spectator mode looks fantastic, and it looks like it's really encouraging some competitive play out of this. The casting and the camera work that they can do with the new tools are absolutely phenomenal. I love them. So if you're into that, there are tournaments this weekend for all of you console folk. The PC one already went past, but yeah, go check them out if you're interested. That is the full discussion for this week's news and the current events of For Honor. I don't believe I'm missing anything from last week other than the tournaments. Wasn't able to cover that last week because I couldn't talk properly. Clearly that's solved. As always, thank you for watching. I hope you have a great day, and I will see you in the next one.